When I moved to Aberdeen, Washington, it was supposed to be a fresh start, not just for me but for all of us. My son Ryan had just welcomed his second child. His wife Brooke was exhausted, juggling late-night feedings and toddler tantrums. I'd sold my home in Montana, packed up 32 years of life into a moving truck, and offered to help however I could. Babysitting, grocery runs, folding laundry, anything. They said yes gratefully. Or at least it sounded grateful then. We settled into a rhythm. Brooke made Pinterest dinners. I picked up the kids from daycare. Ryan and I shared the occasional evening glass of wine, talking about weather and football and nothing that truly mattered. On weekends, we'd all pile into the van for farmers markets or playground picnics. It looked perfect from the outside. The kind of thing you'd smile at in passing. And I told myself I was happy. Until the morning I collapsed in the kitchen. I don't remember falling. I remember the slow tingle in my left arm, the drop of the glass bowl shattering on the tile, the sound of my own breath scraping in and out like a rusty hinge. Then nothing. I woke in the ER with IVs in my arm and a nurse gently checking my pulse. My vision blurred, my mouth wouldn't form words. Somewhere near the door I heard voices. Ryan's voice. "Can we make this quick? It's Brooke's birthday today. We have dinner reservations." A doctor murmured something. Ryan again. "We can't cancel. She'll be furious." And then, their footsteps. Leaving. I blinked up at the white ceiling, fluorescent light stinging my eyes. Machines hummed around me. And for the first time in my life I realized, I might die here. Alone. Because even a stroke wasn't enough to matter. Coming home from the hospital felt less like returning and more like being slotted back into a system where I no longer belonged. The house was quieter than I remembered. Not serene, distant. Like I'd walked into someone else's routine. The furniture had been shifted. My knitting basket was gone from its usual corner. My slippers, the ones with the worn-down heels and coffee stains, were missing. I found them in a box in the garage. Alongside my baking pans, my puzzle books, and a framed photo of me and Ryan at his college graduation. Face down. Brooke called it a refresh. "We wanted the space to feel more open for the kids," she said, placing a decorative bowl on the counter I once used for rolling dough. "Less clutter, you know." Clutter. That was what I had become. I told myself not to overreact. I smiled and nodded and unpacked what I could. But every time I opened a drawer, I found less of myself in it. Soon I was told not to cook. Just to avoid stress on your body, of course. I was gently discouraged from taking the kids out by myself. "It's a liability thing," Brooke said, smiling as if that word didn't sting. One afternoon, I opened the pantry to grab some flour, and found it organized top to bottom with childproof locks. "Just while we recalibrate routines," she explained. Then came the camera. It appeared quietly, mounted near the hallway ceiling. Brooke waved it off. "Baby monitor system," she said. "Safety first." But the kids slept in the other wing of the house. This camera, pointed only at my door. I tried to find peace in small things. Early morning walks before anyone was awake. Tea by the window. Letters to an old friend I never sent. But even those began to vanish. One morning my walking shoes were missing. "You need more rest," Brooke said. "That's how strokes come back." I hadn't had a stroke. The doctor said it was a severe transient ischemic attack. A warning. No long-term damage, no paralysis. But that didn't matter. They'd started calling it the stroke anyway. Like it was my name. At dinner, the conversations no longer included me. They were about soccer games and gluten-free options and Ryan's promotion. I tried to ask questions, to offer help. But everything I said was met with soft smiles and quick redirects. "Let's not stress Mom. Let her rest. She forgets." Even when I hadn't. Even when I remembered everything down to the minute. Like the morning Brooke called her sister and walked past my room without noticing I was reading by the open door. "She's harmless," she said. "But we need to start looking at assisted options." And then she laughed like it was a joke. But her tone was too certain. Too rehearsed. The next day, I opened the drawer where I kept my mail. Bills were gone. Bank statements replaced with summaries Brooke had printed. A single page with bolded balances, no details. "I thought I'd help you streamline things," she said. "Just to keep it easy." That night I stayed awake. I stared at the ceiling fan and tried to figure out when it had happened. When I'd gone from family to furniture. When my usefulness had faded into background noise. When I became the woman they talked around rather than to. The next morning, Brooke suggested I stop using the stairs altogether. "We're not saying anything's wrong," she said. "Just, let's be cautious." So I moved into the downstairs guest room. Smelled like lavender and fresh paint. All my belongings were gone, replaced with generic prints, beige bedding, and a single framed quote on the wall. "Gratitude is the key to joy." I stared at it for a long time. And I realized they weren't punishing me. They were erasing me. The final shift came on a Sunday, during a family brunch. The kids were outside playing. Ryan grilled. Brooke poured mimosas. I brought out a plate of scones I'd made. Cinnamon and cranberry. Just like I used to bake when Ryan was in high school. Brooke took one look and whispered, "We already have plenty of food, Mom." I stood there holding the plate. No one reached for one. No one said thank you. They were never eaten. I found them in the trash later, under plastic wrap, untouched. Next to them, a torn page from a grocery list I had written. The handwriting circled. A note scrawled beside it. "See." Confused again. That night, I wrote a letter to myself. Just 4 words. "I'm still here." Then I folded it. Tucked it into the book on my nightstand. Because if no one else was going to acknowledge my presence, I would. If no one else was going to protect me, I would start. Alone if I had to. It started with a card in the mailbox. Gold foil thick envelope. "You're invited," in cheerful script, followed by a line in smaller print. Brooke and Ryan's annual Christmas Eve brunch. December 24th. Festive attire encouraged. I read it twice. Felt impersonal. As if I were a neighbor, not someone who once rocked Ryan to sleep every night for 2 years straight. Still, I took it as an olive branch. After months of careful erasure, maybe this was the start of something else. Maybe they'd noticed my silence. Maybe something had shifted. So I planned. I baked Ryan's favorite, spiced walnut pie, the recipe from his childhood, the one I made every year without fail. I bought presents for the grandkids. A hand-knitted scarf, a book of riddles, a painted jewelry box. I wore my nicest sweater, did my hair, and tied a red ribbon to my cane. A soft touch of hope. When I rang the doorbell, it was Brooke who answered. She opened the door halfway. Her expression freezing into a tight smile. "Well, look who showed up to eat again," she said, loud enough for the room behind her to hear. For a moment no one moved. The chatter died. Glasses paused midair. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. 50 guests, maybe more. And not one voice greeted me. Not even Ryan's. He was standing near the fireplace. Drink in hand. His tie slightly askew. He looked at me, and looked away. The air went thin. Brooke stepped aside, letting me in with a shallow nod. "Coat rack's full," she said, gesturing toward the guest room. "You can just leave your things downstairs." I didn't argue. I walked in. Set the pie down on the counter, still warm from the oven. Gave the presents to a child who didn't know my name. The party resumed, but it moved around me. I wasn't spoken to. I wasn't included. I was a ghost in a room I helped build. At one point, I saw Ryan move toward the kitchen. I stepped into his path, gently. "I made the pie," I said. "The walnut one." He nodded without meeting my eyes. "Yeah, thanks. Do you think the kids might want a slice?" He blinked. "I think Brooke already ordered dessert," he said. "We don't want to confuse the setup." Then he brushed past me. Not with malice. Just detachment. As though my presence was a mild inconvenience. A misstep in the party planning. I went to the bathroom. Closed the door. sat on the edge of the tub and stared at the tiled floor. I didn't cry. I just sat, until my hands stopped shaking. I stayed for another hour, floating from room to room like a ghost in her own dream, smiling politely, nodding when nodded to, answering when spoken to, which was rare. When the time felt right, I slipped my coat back on and reached for the pie. It was gone. I checked the counter, the fridge, the sideboard. Nothing. Then, in the garage I saw it. The trash bin, still open, half full of torn paper and empty bottles. On top, wrapped in foil, the spiced walnut pie. Untouched. Still warm. I stared at it. Then I reached in and pulled it out. Carried it to the trunk of my car. Drove home in silence. Set it on my kitchen counter and stared at it under the dim stove light. And in that moment something inside me, some remaining softness, hardened into something cold and still. 3 days passed. No calls. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Then, on the 4th day, a message appeared on Facebook. A woman named Melissa. Profile picture. Warm smile, red curls, a name tag from the local elementary school. She'd been at the party. She wrote, "I don't know if this is overstepping, but I wanted you to have this." Attached was a video. Clicked it. The camera panned across the kitchen. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Then Brooke's voice. "Oh, I told Ryan not to actually invite her. But if she showed up, well, I'd take care of it." Laugh. "Won't Ryan be upset?" someone asked. Brooke's smirk. "He'll stay quiet. He always does." The clip ended. My breath caught. Another message came through. Audio this time. Ryan's voice. "She just causes stress. Brooke's been patient enough." I sat back in my chair. Watched the screen fade. Then I stood. Walked to the hallway. Opened the file cabinet I hadn't touched in years. Inside, beneath tax records and birth certificates, was the property deed. And there it was. A clause I had forgotten about because I never thought I'd need it. I still had legal residence. Still had a claim. Still had leverage. I closed the cabinet gently. Sat down at the table. And made a list. I didn't touch the pie again. It sat on the counter for a week, untouched and silent. A symbol now, not food. A perfect, bitter monument to what I'd become in their eyes. An obligation, a punchline, a piece of furniture that occasionally baked. But the videos, the audio, those were something else. Proof. Evidence. Fuel. Melissa and I spoke once more. She said she hadn't meant to stir things up, but something about the way they spoke, it didn't sit right. "I have a grandmother," she added. "I'd want someone to do the same for her." Thanked her. Sincerely. And then I began. I pulled the deed out again and read every line. The clause was clear. I retained shared ownership as part of the down payment agreement. I'd paid $72,000 toward the mortgage in exchange for permanent residency, unless removed by legal dispute or formal buyout, neither of which had ever occurred. I checked my signature. Real. Checked Ryan's. Also real. Then I looked at the bank statements. I'd trusted Brooke to manage the house bills. Years ago, she'd insisted she'd simplify everything. Pay the taxes, utilities, and renewals in one monthly sweep from our joint household account. I opened the app and looked. Except, there was no such account anymore. The app prompted me to re-verify my login. The email on file had changed. Called the bank. They informed me the account had been closed 3 months prior. When I asked why, they said, the co-owner submitted new documents. She had power of attorney. Everything checked out. Power of attorney. I had never signed that. I checked my filing cabinet again. Found nothing. But tucked inside the back of an old recipe book, where I used to keep handwritten family favorites, was a single envelope, unlabeled, yellowed. Inside, a power of attorney document. Witnessed, notarized, and forged. My handwriting faked with decent precision, but not perfect. Loops too wide. My middle name misspelled. The witness, someone named Kyle Monroe. The notary, an online stamp from an account registered to Brooke's email address. I held the paper in my hand for a long time. Then I picked up the phone. Mandy James was my attorney once, back when I was navigating the sale of my Montana home. She'd been kind, efficient, and sharper than anyone expected. We hadn't spoken in years. "Evelyn," she said, her voice surprised but warm. "I need help," I replied. Within 2 hours we were on a Zoom call. I showed her the forged document. Read her the clauses in the property deed. Explain the recent changes, the bank account, the erasure, the Christmas party. Her face didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for a pen. "We start with freezing access," she said. "Then we draft a formal notice. After that, we notify the county assessor and the title office." Her tone was clear. This wasn't her first case like this. And she wasn't going to let them get away with it. Later that night I sat in the guest room, my new quarters, and listened. Ryan and Brooke were in the kitchen, voices low but tense. "I'm telling you," she said. "If she pushes this, it could cost us everything." Ryan muttered something I couldn't catch. "She doesn't even know what she's talking about," Brooke snapped. "You said she was getting forgetful. You said it wouldn't matter." "It didn't," he replied. "Until now. I didn't sleep much. Instead I made lists. Counts to check. Letters to send. Passwords to change. In the morning I went to the public library. Opened a new email. Opened a new bank account under my maiden name. Ordered a P.O. box. At a small print shop downtown, I made certified copies of every document I had. The deed, the forged form, the messages from Melissa. Then I mailed them. One copy to Mandy, one to myself. Insurance. 2 days later, Mandy's letter was drafted. It was precise, unemotional, legally airtight. It stated that all power of attorney designations were fraudulent and null. That no sale, transfer, or modification of property could proceed. That any further financial or medical decisions made on my behalf would be considered criminal if attempted without my written consent. It was mailed via certified delivery. Signed for by Brooke. She didn't mention it. But I saw her eyes flicker when she passed me in the hallway that evening. And I knew she'd read every word. The next morning my phone rang. Ryan's name on the screen. I let it ring. He texted next. "We need to talk." I ignored it. Another message came in. "What are you doing?" I didn't respond. Because this time I wasn't reacting. I was reclaiming. They had taken my kindness and fed off it until I was nothing but a ghost in their hallway. They had counted on my silence. They had counted wrong. The morning after Brooke received the letter, the house was quieter than I'd ever known it. Not peaceful, alert. Like something had shifted in the foundation, and we were all waiting for it to crack. No one mentioned it. Not at breakfast. Not during the awkward dinner Brooke reheated from frozen trays. But I watched their movements. The glances. The way Ryan's jaw clenched whenever he passed my room. They knew. And they were afraid to say it out loud. I, on the other hand, said very little. Smiled. I hummed while folding laundry. I made tea and added an extra sugar cube. I wore my softest cardigan, the one with the frayed elbow, and looked, if you didn't know better, like someone deeply content. That was the point. Brooke once called me harmless. Let her think that a little longer. With Mandy's help, I took small steps, each one deliberate. We filed a formal complaint with the local police department, attaching copies of the forged document. They logged it, assigned a case number, and opened a file under suspected elder fraud. Sounded so dramatic but also true. I changed my direct deposit for Social Security. Opened a new medical file at a clinic across town, away from Brooke's reach. I visited a neurologist who confirmed again, no cognitive decline, no impairment, no dementia, clean bill of mental health. She signed an affidavit stating the same. We submitted that too. I shredded every paper with my name and old address. Bought a fireproof lockbox. Installed a camera inside my guest room. Not to watch them, but to have my own account if something went wrong. I texted Melissa and thanked her again. She wrote back simply, "You're not alone." Stayed on my screen for a long time. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found Brooke at the table, laptop open, papers spread out in a mess. She looked up sharply, clearly startled. "Oh, I didn't realize you were still awake." "I could say the same," I said gently, walking to the kettle. She didn't answer. I poured hot water over chamomile, stirring slowly. From the corner of my eye, I saw her flip a manila folder shut. Quickly but not quickly enough. The cover read, "Resale listing prep." I sipped my tea. "Thinking of moving?" Asked casually. She forced a smile. "Just being prepared. You never know." "No you don't," I said and walked out. She didn't respond. But her silence spoke volumes. Ryan's reactions were more subtle, withdrawn mostly. He started coming home later. Ate dinner in his office. Rarely looked me in the eye. And when he did, I saw the war behind his gaze. He wanted to ask, to accuse, to fix something he didn't understand how to fix. But he also wanted to believe I was the problem, because it was easier than admitting what he'd allowed. Easier than facing the truth in his own voice, recorded and sent by a stranger. So we lived in parallel. I washed my own dishes. Kept to myself. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was documenting. And waiting for the right time. That time came on a Thursday. The real estate agent showed up in a silver SUV, clipboard in hand. She looked confused when I answered the door. "Hi, I'm here to tour the house." "For what purpose?" "Yes, come." Brooke scheduled a walkthrough. Said the co-owner would be out for the afternoon. I smiled, stepped back, and handed her a printed copy of the legal letter from Mandy. "I'm Evelyn. I'm the co-owner." She scanned it, her eyebrows lifting in stages. Then she apologized and left. That evening, Brooke stormed into my room. "You went behind our backs," she snapped. "No," I said. "I just went where you didn't expect me to go." Ryan stood in the doorway, arms folded, silent. "Do you even know what this is doing to the kids?" Brooke hissed. "I know exactly what it's doing," I replied. "It's showing them the truth." Ryan shifted, his eyes narrowing. But he didn't speak. Because he couldn't refute it. 'Cause he knew. Later that night, I found a note slipped under my door. No name, just printed words. "You're not safe here. Please be careful." No handwriting I recognized. No clues. But it didn't scare me. Confirmed everything. They were losing control. And they were starting to panic. The next week was a performance. Bad one. Brooke played her part like she was on stage. She began referring to me as Mom again, louder than necessary, especially when guests were present. She made a point to offer me tea, always when others were watching. She even hugged me once, stiff and awkward, like someone handling a fragile box marked "Return to Sender." Let her. I sat on the couch when she asked. I smiled when she hovered with a camera and asked the kids to take one with Grandma. It was all for show. All to rewrite the story. All too late. Then came the post. Letters addressed to me, but with new return addresses. Retirement facilities. Memory care centers. Pamphlets on aging with dignity. Glossy brochures filled with soft lighting and staged smiles. Brooke claimed they were just resources. "Just in case," she said. "It's always good to know our options." I recycled them without a word. But Mandy didn't. We documented every one. Along with the text. Like the one from Ryan. "We should have just done this quietly." Or from Brooke. "If she fights this, we'll say she's confused. Who will they believe? She doesn't know how close she is to losing everything." What they didn't know was that I'd already forwarded all of it to Detective Pearson, the officer assigned to the elder fraud investigation. She was thorough, quiet, patient. "Most people never come forward," she told me. "You'd be surprised how often this happens." I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. The next escalation came on a rainy afternoon. 2 police officers knocked on the door. Brooke called for me in a falsely cheerful tone. "Mom? Someone here to see you." I stepped into the entryway calmly. "Ma'am," one officer said gently, "we received a call alleging possible confusion, mental decline, and concern for your safety." Brooke stood behind them, arms crossed. Her face a careful mask of concern. "She's been forgetting things," she said. "She's not herself. We just want her to be okay." I opened my folder. Inside, notarized medical evaluations, the letter from my neurologist, signed affidavits from Mandy, printed screenshots, video transcripts, and the certified copy of the forged power of attorney. The officer scanned them in silence, then handed them back. "I apologize," he said. "Everything here is in order." He turned to Brooke. "Do not misuse emergency services again. It's a serious offense." They left without further word. Brooke stood in the hallway, white-knuckled. "You're manipulating everyone," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm just not the woman you thought I was." That evening I made soup. Potato leek, Ryan's favorite. I left a bowl on the counter. He came home late, looked at it, said nothing, but he ate it. And I watched him from the hallway, a man unraveling slowly in the house he thought he owned, under the weight of what he'd allowed. The next day he didn't go to work. Instead he sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I didn't know how far she'd gone," he said quietly. I thought you were okay with it." I didn't answer, because I'd spent too many years explaining myself to people who had stopped listening. He sighed. "She said we'd lose everything if we didn't keep you quiet." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did you lose by keeping me silent?" He didn't respond. But in his silence, I saw recognition and guilt. A week later, Brooke filed a harassment claim. She claimed I was tampering with her documents, threatening her. She even fabricated text, used a burner number to send herself messages she tried to pin on me. But she forgot one thing. The camera in my room. It showed me every night, quietly reading or sleeping, never leaving the room. Detective Pearson brought that footage to court. The judge dismissed Brooke's claims without hesitation. She was warned and investigated. Then came the social fallout. Someone, maybe Melissa, maybe not, leaked the audio clips online. Brooke's voice mocking me. Ryan's voice silent. The comments came fast and sharp. Family friends started pulling away. The PTA revoked Brooke's board position. Ryan was called into HR. The house became heavy with quiet. Brooke snapped one morning, hurling a vase at the wall. "You want everything ruined," she screamed. "Fine. Congratulations." She packed a bag that night. Ryan didn't stop her. He stood in the doorway, watching her drive off. Then he turned to me and said, "I don't know what happens now." I folded a towel and set it on the stack. "You start over," I said. "We both do." Brooke didn't come back. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not even after the investigation became public. When the legal notices were served, they were redirected to her new address in Spokane, a condo under her maiden name. She never replied. She didn't fight the fraud charges, didn't challenge the power of attorney forgery. Her silence was her answer. Ryan stayed. Not because I asked him to. Because he didn't know where else to go. He spent the first month in a daze, moving between work and home like a man who no longer trusted the ground under his feet. The kids, young enough to be flexible, adapted. But their eyes shifted when they saw me, watching, cautious, like they sensed the undercurrent. I didn't push. I baked if I felt like baking. I helped with homework when asked. I stayed quiet when I wasn't. And for the first time, Ryan began to see the full picture. We had long conversations, slow, tentative things about the past, about the gap between memory and reality, about the things he chose not to see. "Did I always ignore you?" he asked one night. "You didn't start that way," I said. "But it became easier." He nodded. "Didn't argue. That was something. The courts ruled in my favor. I retained full rights to my share of the house. The judge recognized the forgery, the financial abuse, the harassment. Brooke's name was scrubbed from every document that mattered. Ryan offered to buy me out. But I said no. Because I didn't want money. I wanted peace. I wanted distance. I wanted my own life, not a room in someone else's. So I sold my share on my own terms, to a quiet couple looking to start a family. Ryan moved out with the kids 2 weeks later. Clean break. No fanfare. I left Aberdeen without a goodbye party. No family dinners. No "we'll visit soon." And I didn't want one. I found a cottage in Astoria. White shutters, a creaky porch, a view of the ocean when the sky's clear. There's a bakery up the road with almond croissants, and a woman named Judith who hosts poetry nights every other Thursday. Go sometimes. Not to read. Just to listen. I take long walks in the morning. I write letters I don't always send. I take photos of sea glass and pressed leaves. I've grown herbs in mismatched pots. Lavender. It's quiet here. Not empty, just mine. Ryan calls once a month. Sometimes twice. He sends photos of the kids. Baseball games, Halloween costumes, drawings taped to the fridge. He never asks me to come visit. I think he knows I wouldn't. But the calls are steady. Small steps. And I take them. Because the past can live beside the present without controlling it. Because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding what stays. One day a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed photo, taken the night of the Christmas party. Me at the doorway holding the pie. Alone. Behind me a crowd turned inward. Unbothered. No one looking at me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I burned it. Because that version of me, the one waiting to be welcomed, waiting to be loved out of obligation, she no longer exists. Now, I wake up each morning to the sound of gulls and the smell of sea air. I make tea in a chipped blue mug with a cracked handle I refuse to replace. I read books with soft spines and underlined pages. Laugh sometimes. Not because everything is fine, but because I'm free. The final photo I keep is one I took myself. It's blurry. The edge of a table, a cup of tea, my wrinkled hand, a slant of light. It doesn't mean anything to anyone else. But to me, it's proof. Proof that I stayed. That I fought. That I lived. And that in the end I didn't just survive them. I erased them.